You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 11th of September 2025 on Monocle Radio. The Briefing in association with Addis. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, coming to you live from Studio 1 here at Midori House in London. I'm Andrew Muller. Coming up on today's programme, the hunt continues for the killer of American conservative influencer Charlie Kirk, as does the search for explanation and meaning. Later in the show, we'll have the latest business news. Also ahead...
I'm Natalie Theodosi, Monocle's fashion director, and I'm here to talk about the changing of the guard at luxury group Kering, with Luca De Meo joining from Renault.
And come on, quit whining, it's only once a week. Oh, I've read that out loud again, haven't I?
Konnichiwa, Andrew. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco, and today is Global Countdown. I'll present you the best of Japanese pop, including Snowman.
The best of Japanese pop. Can't wait. That's all coming up right here on The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Welcome to today's edition of The Briefing with me, Andrew Muller. In the United States, authorities continue their search for the killer of Charlie Kirk. The conservative influencer was shot dead yesterday while speaking at an event at Utah Valley University in Orem. Kirk, who was 31, was struck by a single shot fired from a rooftop nearly 130 metres away. Well, I'm joined with more on this by Monocle's head of radio, Tom Edwards. Tom, the obvious place to start is with the question, what do we actually know so far? But at the risk of preempting your answer, I think we're still at the not much stage.
Unfortunately, Andrew, as usual, your perspicacity is well founded. We know very little. The shooter is still at large, and without wishing to sort of damn the ongoing manhunt whilst it's still kind of getting underway, one suspects that the more time that passes, there may be an inverse tally of likelihood of apprehension. As you mentioned, 130 metres, a single shot. It suggests a highly organised, well-trained shooter who one may assume is going on to exhibit the same kind of facility at disappearing as they did wielding the fatal arm. So, yeah, no further news on that. They had rounded up a few likely miscreants who were quickly then released without charge. I don't know what the strict kind of his precedent is in terms of time elapsed set against apprehension, but that picture is gloomy. So therefore, further speculation about motive or organisation is similarly pointless at this stage.
Well, there isn't a shortage of speculation about motive. We have heard from the President of the United States and a great many of his political allies and media sympathisers on this subject. They have all decided that the killer was some sort of Democrat or some sort of left-winger, and they have all, these by and large being the same people who raised not a squeak or lowered a flag when two actual Democrat lawmakers were assassinated only a matter of weeks ago, have all decided that this is somehow the fault of the American left.
Well, yeah, and I think this is what's interesting. And Andrew, without sort of wishing to sort of turn the tables on you as a host, I'm kind of interested to get your insights on this as a regular chronicler of the current state of the political discourse in the US, the impact of Trumpism, for want of a better word, on that, and the kind of prevailing political narratives. We were chatting actually before the programme about well, I suppose you've got to make an allowance for the historical prevalence of political violence and assassinations in the US. You said to me beforehand, this is a country whose presidents have frequently been the victim of assassination. But I wonder, given that, is it wrong to attribute high-profile political violence, attempted assassinations, at this oppositional discourse, at an ideology of rage and of an ideology that's often predicated on taking action, however misguided it is? Some people are saying, well, look, if you continue to lower the standard of debate, as we have seen Trump in particular do, this kind of reaction is the consequence.
The thing is with that, it's difficult to weave all this into a coherent narrative. On the one hand, it is absolutely risible at moments like this when we hear, as we have heard from many American politicians, wringing their hands and saying, this is not what America is, this is not who we are as a nation. I mean, that's just not true. The United States has a long history of political violence, more or less incessant, so much of it that people forget about a lot of it. And just yesterday, we were speaking to Rick Perlstein, the American historian for this weekend's coming edition of the Foreign Desk, which isn't about this, but is about other aspects of the United States. And I commend all his recent run of epic door-stopping books about America from about the 1960s to the 1990s, because on every single page almost there's some absolutely astonishing, bizarre, violent, dangerous event occurs, which if it happened in any other country, people would remember for decades, but because it happens in the United States, people move on within the week. So there's that. But there is also the fact that what we do know of people who attempt or carry out assassinations of high-profile individuals is that they're very, very rarely motivated by what you might think of as an especially reasoned or coherent set of impulses. They are often, not to put too fine a point on it, quite mad, and it is quite possible that their actions have really nothing to do with anything other than what was going on in their own heads that day.
That being so, Andrew, and I have to say I agree with the thrust of your argument, what does this threaten to do, and this is an unanswerable question, but I'll ask you anyway, to then the prevailing narrative, to that Trumpist discourse? We saw this sort of portentous pronouncements from Trump, predictably. It's worth pointing out, of course, Charlie Kirk was one of the post-Biden defeat apologists who endorse these conspiracy theories, claim the election had been stolen. And, Trump has previously said he was one of the key figures in galvanizing the younger sort of pro-Trump lobby. What do you think, if anything, this will do to, Donald Trump's approach? As I said, unknowable, but some speculation from you, perhaps?
The only thing I can think to say at this moment is that the event itself, the murder of a young man, it's bad, obviously, one would hope, obviously, in and of itself, but also it's very hard to imagine that anything but further bad can come of this. This will amplify paranoid conspiratorial narratives among American conservatism. We are already seeing Elon Musk, proprietor of X, who never needs asking twice to amplify paranoid conservative conspiracy theories, doing that. Doubling down doesn't even quite seem the phrase. It's always. I think that people want to grasp the consolation at a dreadful moment like this, is that surely this is where everybody realises that we are heading down a dark path, and surely this is where we must realise that, more unites us than divides us, etc. We must all come together as one. I would have to say anybody taking that line at the moment is more optimistic than I am.
It's a good point, Andrew, because whatever your politics, whatever your take on, media or the state of, what I would derisively term the bottom half of the internet, this is a young man, 31, 2 young kids, a family man. It's an awful, awful thing, and for that to be broadcast around the world, it graphically is absolutely sickening. Can I ask you a sort of journalistic question? So at these moments, with the pivots you've already described, both politically in the US and without, what should journalists do? I mean, how do you ensure you're covering the legitimate news basis? This is a manhunt. It's a kind of grotesquely compelling story. But what is the take? How do you frame your storytelling? You're the custodian of the Foreign Desk, as one example. What should the storytellers be? I don't know. What's the primacy of storytelling at a moment like this? How do you make sense of it, cover the bases, but not get drawn into either unhelpful speculation or chasing the lowest common denominator?
The thing is to try and keep it, I think, in some perspective, which is, again, is not to say this isn't a big deal, because it is a big deal. He was an extremely famous, at least in the United States, an extremely influential figure. It's been quite baffling to me watching the British response to this, in that, we've seen condolences issued by the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. Now, Charlie Kirk was not. I would have said 48 hours ago the number of British people who had even the vaguest idea who he was would have been in single-digit percentage. So I don't understand why it is necessary for senior elected officials to react like this to the death of somebody who was not a senior elected official. It is getting vastly more coverage in British media than the assassination a matter of weeks ago by two actual elected officials in Minnesota. And everybody is, I think everybody has submitted to the sensation of the moment, which is an easy thing to do, and it's the obvious thing to do, because this is a big sensational story. People are interested in it. But I would like to see more media trying to frame it in a slightly broader context and not assign it an importance it may not merit in its own terms, but also assign it an importance which, if this makes sense, that ends up making the event more important and probably in a good way than it really needs to be.
Wise words, Andrew.
I do my best. Tom Edwards, Monocle's head of radio, thank you for joining us. You're listening to The Briefing. Here is Monocle's Carlotta Rebello with the day's other headlines.
Thanks, Andrew. Poland has banned drone flights and introduced some flight restrictions along its borders with Belarus and Ukraine. These do not affect passenger air traffic and follows Russian drone incursions into Poland's airspace earlier this week. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council will hold an emergency meeting later today to discuss the violation of Polish airspace by Moscow. Spain's parliament has shelved a bill that would have shortened the work week by 2.5 hours in yet another blow to Pedro Sanchez's socialist government. The bill drew criticism from the opposition, which argued that small businesses and farmers would struggle to cope with the higher costs derived from the policy. And the city of Rome has announced it plans to open the river Tiber to public swimming in the next 5 years. Speaking at the Osaka Expo in Japan, Mayor Roberto Gualtieri said he had already set up a working group to proceed with cleaning up of the city's waterways by 2030. Those are today's headlines. Back to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Carlotta. You're listening to The Briefing. It's time now for a business news roundup, and I'm joined, as usual, by Bloomberg reporter Ewan Potts. Ewan, a new report says the world is on course next year for a record oil surplus. Is that good?
Hello, Andrew. Yeah, the global oil output will exceed consumption by an average of just over 3.3 million barrels per day next year. Now, that is the biggest surplus ever if you exclude the pandemic. The data or the research comes from the International Energy Agency. Just to put that in a bit of context, the world gets through about 100 million barrels per day. So this is a surplus of something like 3.5%, which is a pretty large amount, really. The backdrop is a higher supply from OPEC Plus members. The producer group pivoted to pumping for market share over the last year or so. They're led by Saudi Arabia, of course, and they agreed just this weekend to increase output even more. That changes their policy, which they had for many years of restraining output in an attempt to keep the price high. They've kind of given up on that. And that's cushioning the market against geopolitical risks, the things we've been talking about so much, sanctions on Russia and Iran, etc. That is really keeping the price down and it's keeping the output up. The IEA also says that non-OPEC plus nations, led by the United States, the world's biggest crude producer, along with the likes of Brazil and Canada, are going to also collectively raise output next year by something like 1 million barrels a day. As to what all this means for prices, well, oil is already down around 10% so far this year. And I think the key variable is China, both the world's biggest consumer and its biggest importer. It's recently been snapping up large volumes of crude for a massive expansion in its reserves. How far it continues doing that policy, I think, will be key. And as to whether that is all a good thing for the planet, well, I think that is a much bigger question.
And Ewan, possibly a cue for everybody to whip out their very smallest violin, but Elon Musk may no longer be the richest human being alive.
Yeah, Andrew, I know this is a contest that you follow very closely. Larry Ellison, chairman and founder of tech company Oracle, has briefly surpassed Elon Musk as the world's richest person. The $89 billion jump in his wealth yesterday was down to a quite jaw-dropping surge in Oracle's share price. It's fair to say that stocks have become more volatile on good or bad earnings reports, but yesterday's jump in Oracle's shares, 36%, is really not something you see every day for a very large company. Oracle's known for its database software, but it's recently found success in the red-hot cloud computing market, and it's really starting to emerge as a key provider of AI computing capacity. We previously reported that Oracle's signed a deal with ChatGPT operator OpenAI to supply a massive 4.5 gigawatts worth of data center capacity. That's enough energy to power millions of American homes. And the Wall Street Journal reports that contract could be worth $300 billion over 5 years. Fair to say that is a pretty sizable deal.
Ewan Potts at Bloomberg, thank you as always for joining us. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. You're back with The Briefing on Monocle Radio, and fashion news now, specifically news of a new CEO at Kering, the luxury goods group better known by such brands as Gucci, Balenciaga and Saint Laurent, all three of which have lately been struggling even by the standards of a somewhat sluggish sector generally. Charged with turning this around is Luca De Meo, whose career to date has been mostly in automobiles, most recently as CEO of Renault. Well, I'm joined with more on this by Monocle's fashion director, Natalie Theodosi. Natalie, first of all, is hiring a car guy to turn around a fashion house as odd as it might sound?
I think that's a question everyone is asking, Andrew.
Well, I'm asking you.
Exactly. No, I think that it's actually, he has a great track record of turning businesses around. This is what he did with Renault, and this is the task with Kering. And the fact that he will be overseeing the group versus being appointed to lead a specific brand means that it's a bigger picture role. It's about reducing costs, streamlining the business. So there will be definitely a culture shock going from cars to high fashion, I'm sure. And I think that would be very fascinating if we could watch him kind of navigate the Gucci design studios and work with all those big personalities. But there is a lot of confidence that he's the right guy for the job and that he can turn things around.
You have to imagine that dealing with fashion designers is possibly not quite like dealing with car mechanics.
Definitely. And it's at a time when especially Gucci, which is it used to be the highest earning, the biggest brand in the Kering portfolio, it's really struggling. And it has also gone through so many different waves from maximalism to minimalism, changing the logo, changing the store interiors. The strategy has been all over the place. They hired and fired a bunch of creative directors and CEOs. So you do need someone, and maybe an external perspective is what you need, who will come in and just say that this is not working and make some rational decisions.
Well, he has said, quote, that he's going to make clear and strong choices which will not always be easy, which is usually code for I'm going to sack a lot of people.
Exactly. And he was very open about that this is his intention and that he's willing to make those decisions. Also, François-Henri Pinault, who is now stepping down, he said that knowing De Meo, these are decisions that are going to happen fast.
But as we were alluding to with the introduction to this bit, these problems are not just specific to Kering. The whole luxury goods sector is struggling. Kering, perhaps more obviously because it is bigger than most, but its shares are down 50% in 2 years, which is astonishing, really. Is there a consensus as to what the reason is? Have people just stopped buying luxury stuff at quite the scale that they did?
I think that's part of the reason, but at the same time, if you look at the Prada group, if you look at Hermès, if you look at Chanel even, those businesses are still growing, or at least staying steady, even with the economy and consumers kind of slowing down a little bit. I think a slowdown was inevitable given that extreme growth that was happening during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of these groups, and I think actually Kering has chances to turn it around at some point. But a lot of these groups, so those bigger brands, got a bit too greedy. They raised their prices when they saw demand rising during COVID. They tried to expand too fast, opening shops everywhere in the world, doing 10 collections a year, more shows, more product, more categories. And I think that's the moment when the bubble is bursting, and it also diluted the value of the brand. When you're that big and that mass, is it still luxury? So a lot of consumers have deviated. I don't think they've completely stopped buying, but they have moved away from those bigger names to maybe more niche brands or someone like Hermes, which has kept its value. So I don't think the luxury market is that in that much trouble, but I think that the big conglomerates will need to rethink how they do business and what growth means.
Natalie Theodosi, thank you for joining us. You're listening to The Briefing. You are listening to The Briefing with me, Andrew Muller. Regular listeners to the show will, of course, know by now to recognise that little fanfare there as Monocle Radio's equivalent to the 2-minute warning, and are hopefully now in their basements behind a fortification of sandbags with enough tin goods to last them until this is all over, which is to say it's time for Fernando Augusto Pacheco's Global Countdown. Welcome, Fernando.
Best introduction we had for the Global Countdown ever. And we're going to one of my favorite countries today.
Oh, God.
Japan. The wonderful Japan.
There's not going to be a lot of pedal steel in any of this, is there?
All I would say to you, just be patient, because number 5 might scare you a tiny bit.
Fernando, the prospect of this entire segment scares me every time I come in here on a Thursday. You know that.
One of my notes for the song that we're going to hear right now is a Technicolor Princess Dream. And you're going to feel it.
So hang on. We're starting at number 5, just to reacquaint ourselves with the conceit here. This is the top 5 in Japan, and this is a Technicolor what now?
Princess Dream, because they are dressed like princes and there's a lot of color in the video. It's the girl group called Cho Tokimaki and Sendenbu with the song Heartfelt Heart, Super Strongest.
Can I just ask?
We all loved it,
Can I just ask in production? Can we try that again at the right speed?
They were almost as good as the band.
Sorry, is that what it's supposed to sound like?
Yes. And it's a celebratory single because the band is celebrating 10 years of their existence.
Are they?
They were formed in 2015. And I do think their public is aimed at kids, I would say, right?
Yes. I am aware, Fernando, that I'm arguably not the target audience for this. What was it you called it? A Technicolor Prince's Dream?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the best description.
I was going to say not quite, because back in Australia where I come from, we have an expression, the Technicolor yawn. Which is you may have heard this on your travels in my homeland, Fernando. It's an Australian colloquialism for vomiting.
Oh God!
Which is an effect that I believe that track may well have on the sensitive. What is at number 4?
Number 4. It is similar vibes because it's another girl group aimed at kids, but this one, they're a little bit more thoughtful, I would say. Because
a little bit more thoughtful than even what we just heard.
It's about the pain of being young, you know? The band is called it's 248 with Getting Hurt is Youth.
Fernando, ironically, for a song about the pain of being young, that has caused great pain in at least one middle-aged person, and I will invite listeners to guess where.
But they're saying adolescence is a process of getting hurt over and over again. Come on, you have to admit that's true.
Yeah, but so what? I mean,
And then you make a beautiful pop song about it.
when are they going to do that?
Well, and I have a curiosity about Stu48. I don't know exactly how many members are right now, but over 4 generations of the band, there's been 92 original members. So it's usually quite a lot of them.
Okay, so I mean, basically, you serve a stint in this act, and then you kind of go on the run and hope everybody forgets it.
Exactly.
Okay, who or what is at number 3?
Another girl group, but this is different. Do not worry. It's a little bit more current, and they were formed this year in a reality show called No Girls.
So so Fernando, again, I always admire your optimism when you bring the global countdown to me, but what part of Japanese girl group formed this year on a reality show do you think is going to result in something I'm going to enjoy?
If you want to be cool in Japan, you just say...
I don't want to be cool in
Well,
Japan.
some of our listeners might want to do that. And number 3, I generally think is the superior track so far. It is...
They're taking a run up at a low bar here.
Let's have a listen to Hana with Blue Jeans.
Jeans, blue sneaker. Your hair was messed. I said I could let. Oh, don't look at me. Blue jeans, blue sneaker.
Fernando, that makes Bewitched sound like Led Zeppelin.
God, but they're winners. It was a survival.
In what sense?
No, it was I don't know all the details of the show, but it was a survival style reality show. So I don't know what they had to do to win that.
What happened to the ones who didn't make it? Were they by any chance, he asked wistfully, subject to dreadful and grisly torture?
Or I'm sure Stu48 has placed for them. They had 92 original members.
Well, exactly. Okay, we're over halfway. We've broken the back of this. That's something. What's at number 2, Fernando?
Something different for you.
What do you mean good?
It's a boy band. So it's very different. Let's have a listen to Be First with Secret Garden.
Secret garden. この世界で君と二人。時間が過ぎるあっという間に。誰にも内緒。Behold the secret garden. 今だけはスカイに二人。
Is Secret Garden, Fernando, either a metaphor or perhaps a euphemism for something?
I have no idea. I don't know where is the Secret Garden.
I expect you to know these things.
I was like, where is the Secret Garden?
I suppose if you knew, it wouldn't be a secret.
But one thing I'll tell you is Unilever. They love those guys so much. So this song is in the ads for the Unilever products in Japan. And it's the second year in a row that they chose Be First. So clearly there's the commercial side of things there as well.
What's at number 1, Fernando? I am beside myself with anticipation at this point.
Funnily enough, it's my favorite track. It's another boy band. So even though it's called Snowman, I generally thought it was a single guy, but it's 9 of them. And they're kind of...
So it should be Snowmen.
It's Snowman, exactly. But I think there's something wrong with the title. And
I think there's probably going to be a lot more wrong with it than the title.
But they're not only singers, they're acrobats as well. So they're very good dancers. So I would heavily recommend to our listeners to listen to the song, well, to watch the video for that song. But let's have a listen.
Or better still, watch the video and not listen to the song. It's the best of both worlds.
They look very good, so that should be fine as well. Snowman with Charisma X. That make my heart goes boom, boom. I love it. It's my favorite. It's my favorite.
It's your favorite of all time, ever, everything, or just your favorite of the 5 completely wretched tracks you have presented this week?
Favorite of the 5. And if you want to get to know them a little bit better...
There's nothing right now I want to do less.
I would just give a recommendation to our listeners. There's a show on Disney Japan. It's called Traveling with Snowman. And they travel all over Japan, from Hokkaido to Okinawa.
See, I got briefly excited there. I thought, is there any chance that they might travel to somewhere, I don't know, shark-infested or strewn with long-forgotten landmines, or it's just around Japan?
Come on, Snowman. They love it. Lovely people.
Lovely people.
And good acrobats as well.
Well, that's something. Fernando Augusto Pacheco, thank you as always. That is all for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Carlotta Rebello. Our researcher was Danielle Lebror-Smith, and our studio manager was Elliot Greenfield. The Briefing returns tomorrow at the same time. I'm Andrew Muller. Thanks for listening.